while I was a younger man, expecting other people to share their secrets, their market wizardry, their price chart alchemy. They really didn't do it. They really didn't deliver any of that. They just talked about what everybody else talked about. And I was expecting someone to do a better job on spinning the retail stuff that everybody sees. And every time, every single time, a new book, a new course, a new something or other, it would be the same boring bullshit. Wouldn't get anything new from it at all. And then I started pursuing my own studies. And I started thinking to myself, okay, if, and think about this as I ask you this question, if you've never thought about it, think about it right now. If there really were market wizards, traders that were able to do things that were just a cut above everything else that you'd seen before, something just really separates what they do from everything else, what would it look like? Well, I got to thinking when I was coming up, like a superpower. You know, my sons, you know, when they were growing up, and my youngest still, he's a little bit slower than the average person. And I mentioned he was harmed by a vaccine when he was born. And while he's not terribly slow, he's noticeably slower than the rest of my kids. Bright child, very artistic, very creative, but he's slower academically. And sometimes he still talks to me like a little kid. And he'll ask me, he'll say, Dad, if you could be a superhero, what superpowers would you pick? And it's almost like he forgets that he asks me this question. Every 3 or 4 months, he'll ask it, and I'll tell him, you know, something different because I know he's asked the question before, but I want to treat it like it's a new conversation and a new opportunity to, you know, broaden his opinion about what it is that we're talking about. So, because of that conversation with my youngest son, it made me think about this tonight and how I came up learning these things, developing these things, being inspired by how these markets really book price, and really taking a step away from what everybody else and what I was introduced to, like everybody else is. You read the same stuff. Everybody looks at the same thing, the same books, the same strategies, the trend lines and all that stuff. And there are people out there that make money with that. Absolutely. But my opinion, and this is simply my opinion, it may differ with you, and you may not agree with what I'm about to say, but just because someone makes a lot of money, I don't really think that makes them a market wizard. It makes them an extremely profitable trader. Absolutely, that's skill. That is absolute skill. There's no denying that. But I don't really see that as a market wizard. To me, that conjures up ideas of precision, accuracy, foresight, higher strike rate than the average trader, knowing not to go into areas where it's not likely to do well, where other traders that are extremely profitable, they'll take more losses because they're comfortable with taking losses and they're comfortable with coming out of drawdown. Whereas, in my opinion, a market wizard would be abstaining from that and knowing when not to do those things. So when I was a younger man, I made a list of things that I wanted to really focus on. One of them, obviously, I mentioned this many times in passing. And if you're a new listener, I'll just toss it in here because you may not have heard it yet, but you probably will if you go through all the stuff that's on my YouTube channel. But one of the first mentors to me, and I've never met this man, so please don't bother him like other people have done. But Larry Williams, I purchased everything that man put out when I was a younger guy. Whatever he did, I bought it. If he had an article that he did, wherever he did anything, I got it. He was like my Babe Ruth, he was like my Rocky Marciano, my Muhammad Ali. He was the person that I aspired to be like. I wanted to be like him, not in the sense that everybody looked up to him because he took 10,000 to 1.2 million dollars in a year, but because he had tools that I felt were market wizardry. What tools am I talking about? Mostly what he has written in his book, How I Made $1 Million Trading Commodities Last Year. It's a 1970s book, but 75% of that book is still relevant today. I don't subscribe to the lunar phases and all that bullshit, but all the other stuff, the chapters that he dubs his $1 million tools, they absolutely are exactly what they are titled. If you're a commodity trader, that stuff still works. Most of my understanding of what a mega trade is comes right out of that book. And what I've done is I've heard him in his lectures and his keynote speakings and everything that he's ever talked about and taught on. And wherever that man said he had a difficulty overcoming this, or he tried this, it didn't work for him, so therefore I used that. Well, if he couldn't do it, let me see if I can go in there and figure that out. Because I've always been a person that loved puzzles, jigsaw puzzles, crossword puzzles, word searches. That's how my mind thinks. I'm extremely analytical and I'm obsessive. So if I hear someone say they have a issue and I have an affinity for them, my whole point of doing it was I'm going to fix this problem for them and I'm going to share it with them. And they're going to appreciate me because I've done it. That was my 20-year-old mentality going into most of what I was trying to do as an initial trader, trying to figure out these puzzles. And one of his lectures, he mentioned how it was a short-term trading. I don't want to call it a workshop. He was standing up on like the stage and he was just talking to the traders and such, and kind of like an auditorium event. And it was on the topic of short-term trading. And he mentioned how he had no real understanding how to figure out how to buy at the low on bullish days. He would always buy on strength. Most of everything he did, all of his trading systems were buying on strength, buying on strength. If it opens below the previous day's low and it rallies up 20% of the previous day's range, he's buying strength. Well, to me, that's chasing price. And that's why he has these really large stops, $2,500 per contract. That, to me, that's a lot. It's very forgiving when you are very confident that you think it's ultimately going to go a certain measure of handles or range. But I never felt comfortable with that. I tried very hard to use his mechanical systems and his rule-based ideas, and I couldn't make none of that work. It didn't fit with me. And to me, it highlighted this need to be a market wizard. I wanted to be what that title, Jack Swagger's book, I wanted to be that title in flesh. Now, I didn't tell everybody what I was trying to do, because if I told everybody what I was trying to do, they would have told me that I'm wasting my time, or they wouldn't even understand it. Because most people, unless you are a trader, everyone we tell when we say we're investing in trading and day trading, right away they know you're off your rocker. There's something different about you. You're eccentric. That's a nice way of saying you're fucking nuts for wanting to risk your money like this. You have to be a special type of person to believe in yourself doing this and making money. The average person just can't do that. So you should feel good about yourself because you're cut from a different kind of cloth. And when I was younger, I knew that about myself. I knew, even though I felt overwhelmed when I would blow my initial accounts and I was frustrated because I wanted to just work right away. I'd go back to my notes and think, okay, what is I'm trying to do? Where am I going to focus? And I wanted to come up with these approaches that would zero in on very specific turning points in the marketplace. Because I knew, because of my personal losing trades, my stop loss would many times be the very turning point and the market would go the other direction. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if this is a net sum zero game, every loser, there's a winner on the other side of it. Okay. How on earth can I be using everything in these books, going from system to system, using everything? I followed these rules. I followed them. And they didn't deliver. So it made me wonder, if I'm this inconsistent as a new trader and I'm doing the same things over and over again, I need to come to a point where at the moment I feel like I need to be doing what these books tell me to do, I need to stop right then and there and flip the script. If I feel like I have to be a buyer based on that bullshit that I was looking at all those books and trying to utilize, stop. Look for what would exist at the opposite spectrum at that very moment. What signatures in price action would I see if I'm ready to take that trade, if I am committed emotionally and psychologically to follow the rule-based ideas that these retail concepts are supposedly teaching us? At the very moment that I have committed, that I'm about to take the trade, then I have to stop. Turn everything upside down, quite literally. And then look for what it is in the chart at that moment. And that is exactly what I was doing on America Online when people were watching me on that message board run up trade after trade after trade, calling everything in advance. And anybody that would have did trade for trade, everything I said, would have done $90,000 in 1 month without any pyramiding. And that's what got my attention, or that's what got everyone's attention, and started following me. Like you're all following me now because you see me doing things with precision. Every single person that's came to me has come to me by way of seeing something I've done, or you were shared a video of me executing on something. And you noticed that that's something different. That's different. Sure, people buy and sell, they make money, it's wonderful. But they're not doing these same laser guided entry points, pyramiding and building up and building up and building up and going right to the same thing all the time. Targets filled, targets filled, targets filled. You're not seeing $15,000 max loss days in the same week multiple times. You're seeing levels, thought process, narrative, walking you through every individual candle, and the logic that it should deliver to. And it goes against everything that every book that I've ever purchased tells me. So I sat down, and the first thing I figured out was my Power 3. Larry Williams says he couldn't figure out how to buy below the opening price on bullish days. Nothing he had allowed him to do that. That's his words. Was he lying and he did it, surreptitiously in his personal trading? We got to take him at face value. He said he didn't. And that's what I did as a 20-year-old. He says he didn't. So that was a personal challenge to me. I'm going to conquer that for him. He was my hero. I wanted to do that and say, here, look, here's my contribution for producing all this material, who at the time, as a young man, I felt like he did this just for me. Like all the planets aligned. This was the answer to prayer, much like what all of you say about me. I was in awe of his works, his books, everything he did. I was not that impressed with his 10,000 to $1.2 million. I was not impressed with that because I understand that that is absolutely nuts. That's not trading, that's gambling with charts. That's what that is. Anytime you're competing in a competition like that, the only thing you're showcasing is your ability to gamble. Now, if you want to have a competition where precision entries, lowest drawdown, accuracy, then absolutely that's a trading competition. That's where world-class precision would shine. Because anybody can get lucky over leveraging accounts and doing dumb shit. If you've ever traded long enough with live funds, you probably experienced a run where you kept doing something too much leverage, too high of number of contracts or positions in Forex or shares in a stock. And you had this windfall victory. And you think to yourself, shit, if I could just do that like every other day, unrealistic expectations. So trading competitions, while they're wonderful, they're very entertaining, they're not really showcasing trading skill because anybody can over leverage on one windfall price run. And Larry Williams even said that about himself in 1987. He caught a good lick in the marketplace. That was his exact words. So I never looked at that and said that was an inspirational thing to me. I mean, I have to recognize it. It's the longest standing record in Robin's Cup. No one's ever come close to it. But I was more impressed with his tools, how he utilized open interest and how he looked for accumulation and distribution. And his accumulation distribution formula, while it worked a lot as a commodity trader, I saw it, it was there. It made me think about measuring accumulation and distribution, whereas I never would have ever considered it had he never brought it up in his teachings. So it brought this insatiable desire for me to go in pursuing how to track these smart money traders. When I came up with smart money concepts, just like my name, Inner Circle Trader, Larry Williams as my initial mentor, and I call him my mentor because I subscribe to 90% of what he ever said. Now, I probably use about 4 to 3% of whatever he's used and taught in my own personal trading today. But you can see his fingerprints and his influence over me. And I have still a great deal of respect for him. I'm so thankful that he put his work out there, because he could have just said, fuck all of you, and I'm making my money, and there it is. But it's a lot of money to be made when you're teaching. I've seen that. Lots of money. It's real easy money to do that. But you have to have something that's worth learning and you have to be able to show that it works. And that's one of the wonderful things I get to do with all of you. I show you real time. I call it live. I walk you through it minute by minute, and you see it every single day. But these tools where he had his inner circle workshop, well, like I mentioned in Corb's interview, and I've mentioned also in passing when I was on Baby Pips when they were asking me where to get a name from. That inner circle workshop, I was like, shit, I didn't go to that workshop. I wish I could, but I'm going to be the inner circle trader. And now I am. Smart money concepts. Sounds cool, doesn't it? Well, that was inspired by that book written in 1970 by Larry Williams. His smart money tools. His smart money tools: open interest, accumulation distribution, commitment of traders, and premiums. Premiums in the sense that you're looking at the commodity market and you're looking at a normal carrying charge market where the contracts, for instance, like if you're looking at oil, Okay, crude oil. You're looking at the nearby contract now, whatever it's trading at. And we'll just say, I don't know because I'm not looking at oil. Let's say it's $100. And then the next contract in the future that would be traded when the nearby contract expires, it should be like $102. It should be more money going in the future. But if it ever reverses, that is considered a premium. And it's an inversion of normal carrying charge market pricing for the delivery contract months for a futures contract. And that means there's a real high fevered pitch demand, real demand. So supply and demand does work in that asset class. There's a real supply and demand need for commodities. You need it. You need oil. You need gold. You need grains. You need meats. You need coffee. I don't drink it. It's horrible. But people, they need to have that for their fix and caffeine and shit. So all of that is a real supply and demand asset class. You can measure real supply and demand there. You really can't measure real supply and demand with a share of stock or a currency. There's a synthetic approach to doing it, but it's not the same as seeing it with a market like a commodity market, grains, real tangible things, grocery store items, basically, sugar, cocoa, coffee, orange juice, meats, cattle, hogs. So I have a lot more tools and concepts than Mr. Williams introduced to the trading universe and community. But I absolutely subscribe to those that he taught because they are essentially how you can carve out the understanding of real supply and demand in the commodity markets. But I never felt like that was enough. I always wanted to do more. I wanted to over deliver and have an arsenal of weapons. One weapon that was good for when the market's going to reverse and go lower. One weapon that I wanted to use when it's going to reverse and go higher. One weapon when I'm going to trade in a trading range. One weapon when it's going to be an extremely hard, one-directional trending model. Very little retracements. And I set out to look for these things that would repeat over and over and over again. I paid so much money for old data, charts and chart books and things, all kinds of statistical data on every market, everything, palladium, platinum, copper, oats, granola, flaxseed. Those things are very, very thin as a commodity market, but I had all that shit because I was completely immersed in this. I lived in, obviously you can see me, I'm with you every day, more times than I'm sure your own family members are. And I'm constantly pouring into you because I have a lot of shit to talk about this year. But I wanted to have what that book title suggested, Market Wizardry. I wanted to know that I knew that I knew. I wanted to know I had a tool for that. And you hear people say all the time, oh, it doesn't matter what the market's going to do. ICT is going to come up with some shit. And, he did this and did that. You're fucking right. You're damn right. That's exactly what I've spent my entire fucking adult life doing. I got tech that you couldn't even fucking imagine. And I'm sharing it before it happens, proving it.